Welcome to Feedback Friday number 15, where each week we bring you the analysis of someone's stroke to help you better understand what we like to look for and how we go about making changes to someone's swimming. So the video we're looking at here, the main thing I want to talk about today is body position and how I like to diagnose or break down what's causing someone's hips and legs to sit low in the water. And this can be a useful thing to go through in your own swimming if you feel that your legs are dropping low, because the number one thing, and we always talk about this, number one thing we want to do when we're swimming, reduce the drag. Secondly is increase propulsion, but it's very difficult to maintain any sort of speed if our hips and legs are sitting low in the water. So that's what we'll look at today. Now, if we just go back to the start of the video, all right, so the first thing I often look at is where's the body sitting. We want to see the head, the hips and the heels at the surface. And you can see here, okay, head's at the surface, that's great. Hips sitting 20, 30 or 30 centimeters below the water, and same for the heels. So we can see that overall downwards angle. Now, if we can get the hips and the heels up, get to a nice horizontal position, it's going to be so much easier to maintain a faster pace and it will feel a lot easier. So what we then look at is, okay, first of all, let's look at head position. And you can see with his head position, he's looking a meter in front of him. It's within that range of looking either straight down to 45 degrees in front. So in terms of head position, probably not a whole lot we want to change there. That's looking quite good. Then we look at the breathing. Is he exhaling when he puts his mouth or his face back in the water? You can see there he's got constant exhalation. He's not holding his breath, which is good. So then the next thing we will often look at is posture, or what his body's doing, and partly related to his core control and his kick. And we can probably make an adjustment there. That's probably going to be the first thing. You can see that in terms of the posture here, while he's not bending a lot at the hips, the overall position that he's in with his legs, probably not enough core control, sort of glute med activation to help bring the leg up a bit straighter on the up kick. So if we roll through that, let's just bring it to another view here. You can see that his thighs are always angled down from his hips, all right? So always this downwards angle through there. We want to be able to bring that up from the line of his hips or his torso on the up kick, but just not quite getting there enough. So that's one thing that we look at, and we sort of spoke about this drill last week, was one way to help you get the feeling for engaging your core, engaging your glutes a little bit, keeping the thighs and the knees a little bit closer together. A really good way to do it is put a kickboard between your legs like you would with a pool boy. Do a little bit of swimming with that. Try and keep as straight as you can through there by activating your glutes, then your hamstring a little bit to help keep that nice and straight. So that's one way to help bring the legs up somewhat. Now, that's not the only thing that's causing it. Then we like to look at the entry. We'll look at breathing first. All right, so the next thing we look at is breathing here. So one of the main causes of the legs dropping is breathing too high. And what we ideally want to see is that split vision breathing. So one goggle in the water, one goggle out. And you can see here that all of his head's lifted out of the water. Now he's not lifting the head completely out, but his head is turned a long way. And we haven't got the out of water view here, so we can't quite look at that. But we can see that just turning the head a very long way to breathe. So he's breathing up to the ceiling there. The ideal position to breathe is keeping that one goggle in the water, having about half the head in, half the head out. That allows you to minimize your rotation to breathe instead of over rotating. Because you can see that position there, he's rotated too far through his shoulders, too far through his hips, and that's doing a couple things here. It's causing him to lose balance, and for this arm to go quite deep and quite straight in the water. And that's really, one of the big causes of the legs dropping. Now, let's have a look here. So the timing of the stroke's not that far out. You can see here the hand entry is when this hand is underneath the shoulder. So it's that good sort of front quadrant timing that we want, which is fine. So he's not pulling through too soon, but just going down very deep with that arm. So that's one thing we want to look at. Then the next thing we look at is the entry. So what we want to see on the entry is essentially the fingers going in first, which they're just doing here. And we want to see that happening out in front of the head. Then we want to extend forward out in front and get to a position out in front where the fingers are below the wrist is below the elbow. Very close to that position. You can just see the hand is a little bit flat. So I'd recommend probably extending out a little further, tipping or angling the fingertips down a little bit more, not much, but just a bit. And you can see with this pull through, all right, so that's a good shot. You can see on that left side, that elbow is probably just dropping or pulling through a little bit early. You can see there how, if we look at this angle, that elbow is sort of sitting low while the forearm and the hand somewhat pressing back against the water, but that's one thing that we look at adjusting or improving. The right hand entry here, okay, good. Fingers first, which is good. Out in front, pulling through. Okay, now I reckon this is a big cause. This and the breathing is probably the two main causes of those legs dropping. So if you look at where he is here, okay, not a bad position to be starting in, but then as he goes to initiate the catch, tipping the fingertips down, which we want to do, but you can see how the hand doesn't quite go deep enough. And so the hand is pressing back against the water, but the forearm is pressing straight down. There's no angle there with the forearm, and the elbow sits low. And I'll show you from another view here. All right, we can see it here. Not the best view, but you still get a pretty good sense of it. All right, so here, okay, that's a good angle. Now you can see the angle of the arm, first of all. If we were to measure that, I don't have the measuring tool on this app, but if we were to measure this, his arm angles are going to be about 75, 80 degrees. Elite swimmers, it's 100 to 120, so it's a bit more open than that. And you can see how the fingertips are just coming across or sort of underneath the body, and that elbow is kind of sitting low. We want to bring this out wider. All right, so he's sort of, if you can see this, he's here. We want to bring it out a little bit wider, get the fingertips pointing down, and get a bit more of an angle with the arm there. Because if you sort of look at this, that forearm and hand primarily pressing down early on. And what happens there when that happens? So, all right, so what happens here? If this is primarily pressing him, well, the forearm, that's pressing somewhat down, pushes his chest, his torso up, and his head up, which you can see. But if that gets pushed up too much, that gets pushed down, or that the balance changes and pushes that down. So it's going to be a combination of a couple of things, all right? It's not just one thing causing it. And there is a bit of a step-by-step process that we would go through to help make those changes. I'd probably look to start with the breathing to begin with, and the posture, or how he's controlling and sort of sitting in the water here. I'd work with those two things to begin with. There's a couple of drills that we would go through to practice that. I'd practice them for 3 or 4 weeks to begin with, start to make those changes and make them automatic. Then I'd probably look at somewhat changing the catch. Now we could go for all 3 at once, but often you're better off going for 1 or 2 things, getting those right, and then building on it from there. It's not to say you couldn't do all 3, but I kind of like to follow the process, go step by step, and build it up from the foundational level, and then to the more, I guess, technical or finer points of the stroke. So that's probably how I would, diagnose that, and then go about making the changes there. So he's got, obviously, fit swimmer, right? He's got some really good things happening in the stroke, which is great, and it's just going to be about fine-tuning and tweaking a couple of those things. And these angles here, these are the angles that I really like to see. So, when swimmers send in videos to the membership, or when we film them at clinics or at camps like the Hawaii camp we've got in March, the angles that I really like to see and that allow us to get a good idea of what's happening in the stroke. This is the first one, from the side under the water, from the front under the water as well. They're really the 2 key ones. Then the other angles that we like to see are above the water from the side, bird's eye view, and then and then swimming towards the camera as well from above. So that really gives us a good idea of what's happening. So hope you enjoyed this episode. If you are looking to improve your own swimming and you'd like me to do some analysis and work together over the course of 12 months or more, check out our membership, which is at effortlessswimming.com. Or if you want to sort of get down and dirty and just get into a lot more detail, work a lot more closely together, then we've got our Hawaii camp, which is at the end of March. So again, go to effortlessswimming.com, check out the clinics and camps. There's more details about the Hawaii camp there. So that's a very small group. That's 12 swimmers. It's myself and ex-Olympic coach and swimmer Gary Herring from New Zealand. We're going to be taking a group of 12 athletes across to Hawaii. So check out effortlessswimming.com. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, make sure you subscribe below. And I'll see you next week with another episode of Feedback Friday.